I've been wondering whether I should or shouldn't just come out with it and have you address the elephant in the room that is the naming.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to this week's episode of the Fortnightly Frontier. I am the special guest who has been forced to do the intro happily at that, but let's kick it off with some proper introductions. So, to my... Oh, I already messed it up. This is Meyer.
Hi, I'm Meyer.
Meyer. And this is Darj.
Hi.
And now we begin.
Welcome, Zyloh. Thank you so much for coming, man.
Yeah, I'm super happy to be here. Thanks for inviting me.
I didn't. It wasn't up to
I
me.
did.
Darj did. Darj did.
Yeah, no, but we casually talk about it on and off when we meet at CitizenCon and then every once in often. But I had to put my foot down. Damn it, it was time.
Yes, I'm definitely past due.
Yeah, and what a perfect time it is, because it ain't no better time to have a CIG dive on when there's drama.
Drama.
And then there's drama.
Drama? What drama?
When was there not?
Oh yeah, there's always drama. Yeah, you're right. So it's always a good time to have a CIG dev on the show.
'Tis the internet, yes.
It is true. All right, so I guess let's get this show going. Normally when we start these things, we always ask, little questions first, like, your name is Zyloh, right? But obviously you're Tyler Witkin. Can you, I guess, explain to people who may not know who you are?
Intro?
Yes, please.
Yes, a proper intro. Yeah.
Sure, yeah. So my name is Tyler Witkin. I go by Zyloh. I work out of the Austin, Texas studio. I am the director of community, and I've been with Cloud Imperium Games for 7 years, going on this November. Yeah.
Wow, that's a long time.
It's been a while.
Mm.
Yeah. So, Darj,
you've never been community manager all this time, though, have you?
No, I have not. No, I actually joined the company in 2014 as a QA tester. Yeah, so it's been quite the interesting journey. In my years here. Yeah.
So what has your game dev journey been? So did you start off as QA? And where have you worked before? And I guess how is CIG different from those places?
Sure. Well, I started in the industry about 11 years ago at Blizzard.
Okay.
It's a funny story of how I got hired there. I'll spare you that one for now. But joined Blizzard. I was a game master. Was there for about 5 years. Made the leap from Blizzard to Cloud Imperium Games, which was a terrifying one. I genuinely believed that I would be at Blizzard for the rest of my life. That was like my dream job. Before I worked at Blizzard, my only goal was like, okay, I need to work at Blizzard. That's my end game goal. So leaving Blizzard was quite a big deal to me. And at first it was super terrifying, but of course it all ended up worth it. Joined Cloud Imperium Games in 2014 as a QA tester. I'd been going to school for game design and kind of going back and forth between level design, 3D art. Specifically is why I kind of got into level design, is because it's kind of a mix of basic fundamental modeling mixed with design and building out spaces. And that was my path, was to move towards level design. And that is where I was progressing. And as I was in QA and continued my testing, I fell in love with the community. I'm a social butterfly by nature, and one thing led to another. And I eventually joined the community team in 2015, I believe. Yeah. It wasn't too long.
Yeah, I think that's basically more or less when I joined the SC community as well. So I think I've known you as a community person for almost as long as I've known Star Citizen in general.
Yeah, I think that even when I was in QA, I was still kind of seen as a community person, simply because I spent so much time on the old forums. Also in Austin, obviously, we're the publishing hub, and so every time we release a patch, there's a lot of communication that came out of the Austin office, and the team was so small back then that everybody had to wear so many hats that, we had QA on the front lines doing messaging, patch notes, communicating releases. And so it was actually, even though it was QA, there was a lot of traditional community management work that still had to be done. And that's kind of where I made my first connection with the Star Citizen resources and community. And then even when I was in QA, I found that I was such a social butterfly that the actual community team offered for me to have my own show, and so I started things off with, I don't know if y'all remember Witch Glitch.
Oh yeah.
Which was, so I started that in QA and then continued
It needs to come back.
once I was in the community. It needs to come back. Yeah, I think it will at some point for sure. I really do, because there's some. I went back and watched them recently, and it's pretty funny how like just low budget like that they were. Like I'll never forget filming those, and the air conditioning would make so much noise, and we didn't have good equipment back then at all. Like it was very garage bandy, and so like the ceiling would vibrate, and so I took like a bunch of whiteboard markers and like jammed them in the ceiling tiles across the whole ceiling to make it stop vibrating, and like it was just the old days. But yeah. And then what were you gonna say?
I was gonna say, do you ever miss like like level design and that career path and what could have been, or like I imagine that like you kind of like found your dream niche within like game dev now, right?
Yeah, I definitely miss it. I even miss QA, to be honest. There's a sense of like camaraderie with that team, specifically back then, that I think was super special, because when I joined the QA team, there was 5 of us, and there was less than a dozen of us globally. The Frankfurt studio didn't even exist at the time, and we were such a small team that we were in the mailroom. It's literally like a room like where the walls are built with racks for mail. That room did not have air conditioning. It was like cement floors, and it was like a large closet. And it would get so hot in there from our computers. We would daisy chain fans on the floor throughout the building just to keep airflow going through our part of the building. And so it's wild to think about like those times. Back in the day, there's the Wingman and Rob Irving and all of them, and we were in that closet, and we were burning the midnight oil. Those publishes that we would be doing, we were publishing so frequently, and we were just so
involved. There was no Delta Patcher back then as well.
There wasn't. No, it was so involved. We were so hands on, and obviously the QA team's grown a lot now. I mean, now it's well over 100 people, and it's wild to see how things have changed and grown, and just been optimized in so many different ways. But I definitely miss that garage band feeling of being super hands-on with the publishing process and getting those patches out to the players. And of course we still are now, and my team still is, but it's different, right? We're more structured, we're more organized, we've grown up a lot, our processes have improved, we have proper processes, and so I think that's been one of the most rewarding parts about being here for so long, is seeing that progression and that growth of, externally you guys see it in the game, but internally being able to see the company and the business and the processes and the organization grow has been pretty wild. Pretty wild and pretty awesome.
So
would you say that having taken this path was preferable to joining a company that's already established and already knows all the ropes, or
yeah.
Well, it came from Blizzard.
Yeah, sure, but
and Blizzard is well oiled. Like they have everything like scientifically. Like they have a team of data analysts that have really like beat a dead horse with exactly what is the most optimal way to respond to a customer, to handle a project. Like they're very well oiled, and so going from that to transitioning into what at the time felt very much like a startup and like a garage band like effort, it was a massive culture shock to me, and it's funny, I've told this a couple times before, but when I joined CIG, I was here for about a month, and I was just so overwhelmed, and I wrote my 2 weeks notice. I was going to quit and go back to Blizzard. I wrote it, turned it into my boss. It was just like, hey, look, like back then, to explain things in simpler terms, back then in QA, in order to get a build for testing, you had to like build it. You had to make the build manually. Like, okay, you go into the Scratch drive, you're like, okay, I need a data folder, I need a tools folder, I need a bin 64, and you'd have to like get all these things and compile it custom. And it's like flip a coin and hope that it was successful. It was very hands on. And the existing QA testers, they had it down, but for me, it was just so it was just so different than what I was used to. Nowadays, they have a tool called Copy Build. QA testers can come in, click the latest build, download it. It's much more intuitive. But this was
Right.
back in 2014. And so, to answer your question, and a lot of questions like the one you asked, it's always going to be, I answer them the same way, which is this double-edged sword. I think there's massive benefits into coming into a company that's not fully established early on like that, as opposed to coming into one that's already well established and has a bevy of released games under their belt already. Obviously, coming into a company that's well established, decades old, been releasing games, it's the learning curve is definitely more shallow. They have existing processes, but the downside of that is I feel like you get to leave less of a footprint. You get to make less of an impact. With CIG, when I joined, it was very much so that everybody in the company, doesn't matter if you're the lead designer or entry level support or QA, everybody was on equal playing ground. It was just such a collaborative effort that everybody was contributing, everybody was being listened to really kind of shape that foundation of what Cloud Imperium Games grew into. And it's part of our DNA. And I think that even though we've grown to, I think we're over 700 people now.
Wow.
Even though that we've grown, we still try to stay core. We try to stick to our core DNA of like every voice matters, which is funny because that's actually it's one of the key core pillars that Blizzard had. And that's one thing that was very relatable coming to CIG. Is that every voice matters internally and externally as well. We're literally built on a foundation of community. So.
So, moving from Blizzard to CIG early on in the developing stages of CIG, didn't that feel like a huge risk? What was the? I mean, I wouldn't ask what was the fire to move from Blizzard to CIG, but what made you decide to take that risk?
Yeah, I still can't believe I did, to be honest. I was working my way up the ladder at Blizzard and doing very well there. But it got to a point where there was 800 people in the Austin studio at Blizzard, and the competition into breaking into development and out of game master support, it was so cutthroat, and I feel like I could have done well in that environment, but I started having doubts. I was just like, man, there's so much competition and everybody there. I'll say this now, I have so much respect for everyone at Blizzard, no matter what position they're in. They are really dedicated folk. And so you get to a point where even the hardest working people, there's just so many of them that there's almost a bit of a gamble. It's very hard. Internal mobility is very difficult at Blizzard. And so I was always keeping an eye out, just thinking about, one of the things that is, they actually give advice over there frequently is sometimes you have to leave Blizzard, build up more experience, then come back to Blizzard.
Right.
And a lot of people kind of took that route. And, I had a friend on my team named Justin who left Blizzard and went to Cloud Imperium Games. And I had been hanging out with him a few times, and he was telling me yeah, I'm working at this place called Cloud Imperium Games now. We're in the basement of a house actually downtown, and he was like, I don't really know what's going to come of it, but it's the passion from everybody working on it is super contagious. But there's only a dozen or two of us. It's really small. This was 2012, 2013 era, and he was just and I remember thinking oh, that's cool, man. Well, good for you. And I kind of secretly was judgmental, I think, because I was just man, you left Blizzard to go to some indie startup, what are you doing? And then 2013 I continued to hang out with Justin. He was telling me more about the project, and the things he was telling me, I was just wow, that's crazy. That's what I've always dreamed of, living in a world and a universe like that. And he got me really interested. And so one day he said, hey, one of our QA testers is going to get promoted to a DevOps engineer, a fellow by the name of Keegan. And Justin said, but we want to backfill this QA position. Do you want to just come in and just chat and just see what the studio's like? I was like, yeah, sure, why not? And so I went in, and they had just moved to the current Austin studio. And it was a 2-hour long interview, because it was half interview and half us talking about DayZ and catching up and stuff.
Right.
But one thing was sure is that when I walked into the studio, it was just the coolest vibes. And I've said this in a few videos, even in recent years, the Austin studio is it just feels so homey. it's like it just feels so cozy, and everybody in there looked like, I mean, it looked like as if you had 40 of your closest friends all get together and set up like a giant LAN party. It just felt like, I was like, wow,
Oh
this is
yeah,
great.
I
And
got that same feeling when I went,
Yeah.
when I was touring. Yeah, it's like everybody's just there, and it's
Yeah.
not like you're segregated into your own cubicle or offices, but
Exactly.
it's
And at
like
Blizzard, we
you can
had
just
cubicles. So.
yeah, like you could just roll your chair over to your friend and just chat a bit and then go back.
Yeah. No,
Yeah.
absolutely. And that was one of the things that was shocking to me too, is because at Blizzard, everybody's in their own cubicle, and it's it's very structured and organized. And this just felt like everybody was loose and collaborating, and I was watching everyone walk around from desk to desk and giving feedback in real time, like talking about ships and environments. And it was just cool to see everybody kind of just like, it just felt like a giant craft project, and it just felt good. It felt really good. And then after talking to Justin and Gerard and a few of the people in QA leadership, I was like, this is actually pretty sweet. And I'll never forget, like, when I told my family, my mom, I was like, hey, I think I'm gonna quit Blizzard and go to this company. I'll never forget. My mom was like, what? You worked so hard to get a job at Blizzard. This is what you've been talking about since you were a kid. Why would you leave Blizzard? And I was like, I know. Just trust me. I'm just going to give it a try. My boss at Blizzard said I could come back, if it didn't work out, because I was doing really well at Blizzard and had good rapport with my leadership team, and they were more than willing to be supportive, and said, if you need to come back, you can come back. And so I made the leap, and it was like super scary. And like I said, the first experience was overwhelming, and I think a big part of it too is like being at Blizzard. We had 800 people in that office. I had so many friends that I had connected with and built relationships with for years. I mean, I'd been there almost 5 years, and the idea of losing all of that is kind of like, to me it was equivalent of like when you move out of state and you miss all your friends and your family.
Right.
They say when you leave Blizzard, like, you always bleed blue, because part of it sticks with you. And I don't even think necessarily it's the work. I think it's the coworkers, because there's just so many nerds in one building. You can't help but build meaningful connections. But yeah, I mean, I worked at CIG. After about a month and a half, I couldn't do it anymore. I put in my 2 weeks, and Justin said to me, look, it's overwhelming, yes, but we're going to do things that are just going to change the industry. If you just trust me, friend to friend, not boss to coworker, I'm telling you, you should just give it 3 months. And then if it doesn't work, then you can go. And he kind of gave me the opportunity to, feel it out, and encouraged me to stick around. And, sure enough, it's like riding a bike. All the processes and all the things that were overwhelming became first nature and easier. And then things started getting wilder and wilder, and everything started growing, and one thing led to another. And I was just like, this is my new home. Like this, everything was so fast paced back there. And then I started to, a lot of the friends I had at Blizzard, we didn't make friends with our community, right? The community in the developers, there's a very thick wall between them. It's a very different relationship. And then at CIG, I found that I started making seriously meaningful connections with not just my coworkers, but with people in the community. I mean, this was back in 2014, and I was watching people like Trip Rodriguez, and I was like super into the content creator scene back then, super active on the forums, and it was just, I started to find that I was, whether this is healthy or not is to be debated, I suppose, but I started finding myself like truly becoming good friends with hundreds of people in the community, which ultimately led me to where I am now. So.
Yeah, what a journey, and look where you are now. I mean, it's cool that you had like a safety net from Blizzard. That's really cool. But I mean, like, you stuck with it, and here you are, man. That's awesome.
Yeah. Here I am on the Fortnightly frontier.
Yeah.
There's nowhere else.
It's all down here from here.
No, this is peaking, my friend.
Yeah. What's it like though? In your job, just dealing with this community, because I know it can be very easy.
No, I love it. I mean, I love it. I obviously, with the Blizzard thing, like, I'm not against going outside of my comfort zone, even if it means leaving or shaking things up or changing roles or departments or whatever. But I absolutely love my job. I love my team. I know I got some of them in chat. It's brilliant. I think that community management is an extremely stressful role in the industry, But when you've done it for a while and you start to kind of see the bigger picture of what it's all about, it actually starts to be something that's super fascinating. It's just, there's so much like human nature, like sociology to it all. It's just it's awesome. The passion, the happiness, the frustrations, the anger, it's all very insightful one way or the other. I've talked a lot about, how I deal with positive versus negative feedback and stuff in the past. And yeah, I don't see myself ever going back to level design or anything else. It's all about the people for me.
So we know that like Jared does like the content management and stuff like that. So as a community manager, like what does your work entail? Because like as a forward facing member of the community, like I mean like I guess to rephrase, like what's your day to day?
Yeah. It's different all the time, but
Right.
I think I can paint a semi decent picture.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess I'll tell you me specifically a bit, and then I'll talk a bit about community management, my team as a whole. So obviously I'm the director of community, so I manage a few different I call them sub departments within one department. So there's
Mm-hmm.
the community team, but within that we've broken it up into a few different departments. So we have our moderation team, which is obviously moderating on Spectrum and on Twitch. We also have social media, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, the corporate website, across multiple accounts, Star Citizen, and our corporate Cloud Imperium game accounts. So yes, moderation, social media, and then we have community management. And then in the future, we will have influencer relations to help manage some of the stuff that we want to work on in the future. And then while PR isn't necessarily under me, it's something that I'm still working very closely with. And so you'll see there's a lot of different specializations underneath the community.
Mm-hmm.
The day to day is pretty much anything that you see on the website. I guess where do I even start? Obviously, exploring Spectrum, Reddit, Twitch, social media, everything is super important, but that is just barely scratching the surface. That is like the minimum standard of being in community management, because obviously it's important to stay in the loop with what's going on with the community, which means spending time on every platform, every social media platform, every video platform, and obviously our platform as well. But just to give you an idea of some of the other stuff that my team works on, my team is responsible for things like the monthly reports, the postmortems that come out that we've been doing as of late. We did one for the last few patches, and we did one for oh, it's not out yet. We're doing one for the Xenothread event, which will be out soon. The AMAs, any Q&As, any contests that we run, lots of chasing down clarification from development to try and message things, messaging across the board, good news, bad news, announcements. A few big projects. We're responsible for the Welcome Hub, which is playstarcitizen.com, the guide system, the entirety of the public roadmap. Shout out to Jake Acapella in chat, who's been helping tank that, which is working closely with Turbulent to design, manage, populate, and publish everything on that roadmap. Influencer relations, every quarter we work with a lot of different content creators, collaborating with giveaways. My team also does a lot of biz dev work, so business development. We work with third parties like NVIDIA, Intel. We did an Astro Gaming giveaway in December. We've built some custom PCs in the past with Intel. We just did some really cool collaborations with Tobii Eye Tracker recently. We also do we contribute to a lot of what we call evergreens, which is things that kind of publish regularly, like the weekly newsletters, weekly staff picks, weekly MVPs. We help with game capture for anything from trailers to ISC, SCL. One of the most important is sentiment tracking. We do sentiment tracking and analytics, both by working with Google Analytics, but also working with our in-house tools and our data solutions team. Whew, the list goes on and on. When there's not a pandemic, studio
no wonder
tours.
You got like 100 people.
I wish. We're definitely, my team is definitely understaffed right now, but that's what we're trying to fix. But basically, if you click on com links on the website, just about everything coming out through there is built and managed by my team. And then of course at CIG, because we're entirely built on a foundation of community, because it's open development, we're embedded in just about everything. as far as vetting things before they go out, and letting people know what expectations are, for if they go out. So this means that, my team, we review every ISC, every SCL topics. We work closely with Jared to help plan out topics coming in the future, calling all devs, etc. In the same way that we get our hands on, we feed we feed Jared the questions during SCL. I just keep seeing Jake in chat, so I keep saying his name. But yeah, I mean, on the video side,
you're saying Jake is going to be replacing Jared soon.
No, nobody can replace Jared. But yeah, we work extremely close with Lando, though, just in coordinating, sentiment, but also in planning, in thinking about the bigger story. We try not to just throw things together, but to think about like long term on a quarterly to quarterly basis, like what kind of stories and directions do we want to take all of the output we're doing, and how can we connect them all? How can the monthly report complement ISC, which complements the post-mortem, like everything, right? And so yeah, kind of, if you haven't gotten it yet, we kind of are involved in everything.
Right.
This also means that we're in development meetings, we're in publishing meetings, the live syncs. We have to review patch notes, you name it, we're there. So on a day-to-day basis, it's always different. It just depends on what needs to be done. There's always 10 times more work than what we can accomplish in a day. So it's just about prioritizing and balancing resources as best as possible. And then right now we're looking to grow the team a bit, which will help.
Awesome.
Long answer. Sorry about that.
Yeah, that's a
good answer though.
A lot to process. Yeah.
Yeah. Jeez. Can we go back a bit to your history?
Sure.
Like, what was your best? What was your first big project that you were entrusted with?
I actually think it was Witch Glitch. To be honest. Because that, I can think of a few others as well, but that was really terrifying for me, because it was like I was trusted in Austin. I'm separate from the video team in LA to kind of set up cameras, audio, lights, and kind of make my own thing, which is why the first episode has no video of us. It's just, we just recorded audio and then showed B-roll. And then we finally set up a webcam in one of the meeting rooms and dealt, I think I mentioned, with the vibrating ceiling. And that was a really fun project. And then I guess beyond that, when I actually joined the community team, though, I was really big into Twitch. And I really tried to kind of push some focus on that so that we could actually do more streaming and whatnot. And then, Lando took to it and ran with it, which made me super happy. Yeah.
So Darge talked earlier about drama, jokingly, right?
Mm-hmm.
And part of the community team, is community outreach and talking to community, and every month or every quarter, there's always one topic or another of contention or drama. How do you what is your process when it comes to handling negative feedback and that kind of thing in general?
Well, I guess we're always trying to kind of evaluate the landscape and be proactive about things to try and predict what may come up in discussion before it actually comes up, which is whenever you see us release an FAQ, for example, that's because we've had a brainstorming session and we've tried to think about what people are going to talk about or question. As far as negative feedback goes, I'm totally okay with it. I was just talking to Paul about this, the Astropub, about this, because I know that he's very verbose about the naming stuff, and I welcome it. And I was kind of bummed. I saw some people that were talking down on people who are frustrated and negative, but I don't think that anyone needs to do that. I think that frustration and feedback, that if people don't like something, is totally okay. Obviously, it's easier for my team to absorb it when it's constructive, when it's something that's actionable. When people say they don't like something, that's okay. That's still useful for us. When they say they don't like something and then they also suggest alternatives, that's even more useful. And when people treat each other kindly, I think that it makes their feedback just so much more effective. I talked a lot about this a long time ago. The last time I talked about it, I ended up on the Anthem subreddit being quoted, which was really weird. But essentially,
Anthem subreddit.
It was very weird. But essentially, for me, I would rather have somebody who is angry and frustrated and giving negative feedback than someone who's silent. If you're silent, it means you don't care. If you're angry, it means you care. It means you're passionate, right? Anger is just another form of passion. And so I think it's part of my team's job to look at that anger or frustration or negative feedback and really like break it apart to get past that surface. There's always the top layer, which is kind of some of like the impulsivity of caps locks and yelling and sometimes profanity. But beneath that, there's a root, which is something that is generally pretty useful and meaningful, and so you just have to find out what it is, right? Somebody can yell at me and say, F you, Zyloh, what were you thinking? Why are you doing naming this way? You should be fired. It's like, yeah, that's not constructive and definitely not helpful. However, and I'm not encouraging that behavior, beneath it, that person, is not happy about naming. And so quite often what we do is we reach out to people and we try to engage in a conversation with them to try and really identify like the root of it, because that's super useful. And it's not just my team as well. Like I want to give full credit to, you guys know Bayor. Bayor is leading our player experience team, and he's super involved in managing all of our feedback threads on Spectrum and the surveys and reporting. And it's something we take seriously enough to where we've established an entire department that is literally focused on feedback and the player experience. And so negative feedback's okay. The more constructive, the better. But we wade through it all, and we're very reasonable, patient, and understanding. And I more often than not, people will reach out to me and say, "Hey, I just want to say it's not personal. I apologize, but I'm really going to be vocal about this thing." And I'm like, "You don't need to apologize." And I never thought it was personal, and I welcome all the feedback, and that's the truth.
Would you say that, like, just because of how human nature is, would you say it's easier to know when people are upset about stuff and negative feedback than it is like when people are happy? How do you, in general, tell if people are happy about something, or is it just because there is less negative feedback? What's the metric for that?
It is definitely a hard thing to measure, and it's definitely a hard thing to put, a clear KPI on, but there's a lot of different ways that you can kind of measure sentiment. And I mean, it ranges from the things that personally sometimes I don't trust as much. There are tools out there that scan all of the posts on a forum or scan all the social media posts and use keywords and tone and punctuation to try and spit out like an algorithm based mood of people. I mean, we do run that stuff, but I don't think that's the best approach. I think that it's a lot of it comes from experience, a lot of it comes from data, and a lot of it comes from where you marry the two. The longer that you do it, the kind of the better that you kind of have your finger on the pulse of it. But yeah, I mean, it's definitely metric driven as far as comments, replies, engagement. It's also just gauged on kind of some levels of common sense. And a lot of times, I say more often than not, we totally anticipate how people are going to react to things. And sometimes we do have to make decisions that might make people frustrated for the betterment of the long term. And in other cases, sometimes we have to make decisions that we're fully aware it's going to upset the subset of the community that might be like a very vocal minority group. And so we're able to sometimes recognize through not just through data, but just through an amalgamation of different things that sometimes things can seem louder than they actually are. It's kind of difficult to answer this one without like laying out all my tools and process in front of me, but it's a complex thing, and it's really just about being present, I think, more than anything.
Right on. So I've been asking quite a few questions. I'll let Darch take this next one.
I've been wondering whether I should or shouldn't just come out with it and have you address the elephant in the room that is the naming. And
I mean, you're more than welcome to bring it up. Like I mentioned, I made a comment already, which I feel like is pretty holistic in that it kind of says where we're at right now. So there's a lot of discussion about naming, ship naming specifically. Like I mentioned, we went back and forth internally. We debate everything. And one of the things I think is really important to note is that at the beginning of that message, I called out that the feedback that we often see publicly, we totally have some incredible resources internally, because we have dozens and dozens and dozens of like super fan backers who were in the community before they joined CIG that are internal and staff now.
Hmm.
And so for a lot of this stuff, I love to run things past these groups. I call it a gut check. And we talk to all of the internal groups that are big backers of the game as well before they joined. And a lot of the naming stuff, we saw exactly what went public. We kind of saw internally just on a smaller scale, which was that there was just some debate about it. There's definitely people that are very passionate about wanting to keep the names unique, and there's definitely people that are very passionate about not wanting them to be unique. And so that was partially expected. And then the other thing is that, like I mentioned in the messaging, I'm just kind of breaking down my message in more detail right now.
Right on.
Is that, Star Citizen is an alpha right now. We are not afraid to try things and test things and explore things, and it doesn't mean that anything is etched in stone. And I even kind of called out some things that didn't go well for us, like digital tickets for CitizenCon, right? Like we went back on that. That was not a good idea. And that's the point of that is not to give hope that like, oh, the naming stuff's gonna be reversed, or it's not any of that. It's more of trying to convey that, like, at this stage, the feedback is super welcome. And that's basically what it is we want to hear from you. My team has spent this weekend and most of Friday as well, happily basically documenting all the feedback about this across all platforms. And like I mentioned earlier, it's both, we do something called quotables, which is we save quotes of things that are being said that are trending, especially when somebody says something and it picks up a lot of momentum. We save quotables. We take note of threads that are trending, and then we also go off of sentiment analytics. We'd look at some of the traffic increases that we've seen on certain topics, and yeah, it's all being tracked and all being taken into consideration. It's all being funneled, or rather, it's not yet. It will be, to people like John Crew, Todd Pappy, Tony Zurovec. I've already have some open questions to Tony that I'm waiting on an answer for, which is, can you give me a bit more detail about, the difference between ship names and serial IDs? And can you help me understand the difference of how they'll be used long-term in the verse? Do we have a rough idea? Do we have a thoroughly thought out idea? Like, these are the things that internally that is not always visible to the public right now, because I'm not going to give you guys play-by-plays as we're chasing stuff down, but we're reading all the feedback and we're chasing stuff down internally with the design teams and development teams to get their rationale and thinking, and ultimately we're pretty reasonable, and we're not really stubborn about things, which is what the end of my messaging was trying to say, is that this is a part of the process of iteration, and I welcome all the feedback to continue to come in. And I will say that I don't see this as drama personally. And that's one thing that I think I disagree on labeling this as drama. I think this is game development. I really do. I think it's game development, and this is Cloud Imperium Games' version of game development, which is where you let everybody in. Everyone has a seat at the table, right? And when you have, the more people you have at the table, the more people you have disagreeing about things. And also, the more passionate a subject is, the louder things may seem. So I'm less concerned about any drama or polarization, and more currently focused with my team on, like I mentioned earlier, cracking through that top surface, finding the root of the feedback. All those very long posts on Spectrum that are in reply to mine, I've read them all. My team's reading them all, and we're taking it all to heart. So
that's really great to hear. I mean, like, as you say, everything to do with the game is an iterative process, including community management and how you respond to people's their input. And it's nice to hear that people, especially those who put a lot of time and effort into their opinions, they're being listened to, and their opinions are being measured. That's really nice to hear.
It's definitely, and it's not even just the case that we read them. Just obviously the community team is accountable and responsible for reading everything. But Chris reads them. Chris reads like everything on Spectrum. I mean it. I shouldn't say that, because now people are going to start addressing their Spectrum posts. Hey, Chris, But I can tell you that Spectrum can get pretty active, especially during peak hours, and I have definitely had Chris ping directly and say, link a Spectrum thread and be like, hey, scroll down here. Let me quote link this or permalink this exact comment. And it's like 38 comments buried, has like no upvotes. I'm like, I don't know how he got this deep into the thread. And he's like, what does this person mean when they say blah 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 blah? And I'm just like, oh, I think they blah. He's like, can you send them a PM and make sure that that's what they mean? I'm like, yeah, sure. Like he's like, it's not just the community team. It's I think one of the benefits of having so many developers that are really invested in the project. I think
Right
a lot of
on.
people are working on Star Citizen because it's like their dream game, and so the opportunity to make their dream game means that they're invested, which I think is something that's kind of unparalleled in other studios. So yeah, feedback's definitely heard. And just one last thing I want to tack onto that is just because feedback's heard doesn't necessarily mean that feedback is always going to sway the outcome, and that's something I think is important to set expectations.
Mm-hmm.
At the end of the day, there's a lot of factors that play into a decision. And one of those factors, which is extremely important, is community feedback. But it's not the end all be all. At the end of the day, we have people that have been making games for decades and decades, and
Of course,
sometimes
yeah.
sometimes the decision is made, from the development side of this is how we want this to feel and play. This is an artistic, creative decision for how we want Star Citizen to be, and it might not mesh well with everybody, right? But sometimes that will happen. It doesn't necessarily mean that feedback was blown off. It just means that all the feedback was taken to heart, taken into consideration, and then ultimately a decision was made.
Mhm.
And even when a decision is made like that, like I said, we continue to monitor feedback, because the last thing we want to do is make a game that people don't like or people don't play. And so
Right.
it's always going to be an iterative process, just like digital tickets wasn't immune to not being changed, in the same way the flight model's still not immune to not being
Yeah.
changed, right? So
I was gonna mention that one of the things that comes to mind when it comes to this is the hover mode that was decided on, that was developed, that was in the game,
hmm
but eventually removed because the players didn't like it.
yeah,
And I'm told that it's still being worked on and iterated internally, and then until it's in a better state, more representative of
right,
what
right.
it's supposed to be.
But that's a great example, though, of how, even if the community is like, we hate this thing, then maybe we shelve it for now until we get it to a place where it's not hated, right? That's a great example of how community feedback is taken on board and utilized, but it's not the end all be all. It's not like, okay, hover mode's never going to exist. You know what I mean? It's
Mm-hmm.
it's just all part of all part of the process.
Right. So I think we've had you here for quite a while already. I think almost like going 42 minutes. But I have a question for
Oh.
you because yeah, right, 42. But like so I guess you've talked about your process of like, getting into game development and then like
hmm
getting hired by CIG. And I suppose your journey, your path has been rather unique, just
Mhm.
based on the whole like nature of CIG in general. But do you have any advice for anybody maybe looking up to you who might want to become a community manager or like, into your field of game development?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I guess the first thing is I want to be realistic about it. It's not for the faint of heart. Um, People can be pretty cruel on the internet, as many of us know and have experienced firsthand. Some of the impulsive nature and just the dark humor and the frankly the horrible things that people can say and how they can treat each other on the internet is can be pretty horrible. And so you have to be able to balance out understanding that a lot of it is not authentic. A lot of it is that power of anonymity, of being behind a monitor, that people impulsively say things that can be very hateful, but in reality, um, they're not always true.
Mm.
Doesn't justify the behavior. People shouldn't be that way, but it is the internet, and people can be nasty. And so, working with an online community of any kind, you get exposed to the passionate fans and the community and the people that want to help and give feedback and work on that iterative feedback loop with you. But you also get people who, you know, they absolutely get the lulls out of seeing you fail. And so you have to be able to, you know, to dig deep within yourself and recognize that the internet can be a crazy place. As far as people that think that they want to get involved, I would say that that type of that type of world on the internet, it should never deter you. I say working with online communities can and is for me the most rewarding thing that I've ever done in my life. And how you get started with it is really just putting yourself out there. I think that if you're into online communities, if you're into people, just friendship, connections, and bringing people together, then community management might be for you. And you can start out with being active on the forums, on any forums. You can be active by joining a moderation team for anything, a Twitch streamer or a subreddit, whatever, any way that you can to just get involved into helping, foster an awesome online community. Go for it, and you'll find that if it's for you or not. And if it is for you, then you'll succeed in it, and one thing will lead to another, and the next thing you know, you'll be on a professional community team. Yeah.
Mm.
Thank you. So
I mean, it has happened. We know quite a few people in this Star Citizen community that have gone in to become employees at CIG.
Indeed.
Quite more than 5.
More than 5.
More than 15 at least.
More than 2 hands.
I mean,
yeah, exactly.
You two are both community managers. I'm sure you know that as well. You guys are both community managers. This show, you all are managing a community around this show. You all are managing.
I'm not paid enough for this.
Like you get
around
paid.
your content. It might not be it might not be offering as much of like a tangible, like people can touch and feel it product. So the feedback loop isn't as like obvious, but absolutely you guys are totally doing community management right now. So yes, you.
I have the power.
I dare to dream.
So before we finish our interviews and stuff on the Fortnightly Frontier, we like to do this thing where we call our quick fire round questions. So I guess I'll start off, and I'll say sandworm or space whale.
Space whale. I'm a pirate.
Right.
Solo or Riker?
Solo.
Favorite Star Citizen ship?
The Arrow. I've got a few, by the way. It depends on the category.
Okay. Favorite fighter?
It is the Arrow, even if it's not the meta. I just love that ship.
Right.
My baby was the Carrack, but although I'm struggling because the Carrack became such a thing, and I felt like a hipster because I loved the Carrack before it was cool. Seriously, when I joined the company in 2014, it was right as the Carrack was revealed, and so I latched onto it. It was like, that's my Serenity. And then
since 15.
Yeah. So then everybody started loving the Carrack, and I was just like, no, don't meme. That's my baby. Like, so now I'm like, I feel forced to find another favorite ship. And so, I'm a huge fan of the Arrow, but I'm also a huge fan of the Cyclone. I don't know if you've seen my Cyclone videos on social media. Yeah. Not
also,
a ship, though.
Cyclone in Rocket League win.
Yes. I would love that. Trust
That'd
me.
be awesome.
I would love that crossover. That needs to happen.
Darge, you're next.
Favorite non-Star Citizen ship?
Ooh, that's a good question.
Doesn't have to be spaceship.
Ooh. Can I just say generically a pirate ship? I'm a huge fan of the ocean.
The Black
pirate
Pearl.
games, Sea of Thieves, all of that. I'm a huge fan of. I'm a big fantasy fan as well.
Favorite Star Citizen role? What do you want to do when the game gets out?
I shouldn't say this, but piracy.
I mean, could you not see that one coming? Right?
There was a theme, yeah. Bit of a trend.
And, well, I guess the final question for this is, where can we find you? But,
everywhere.
It's you, yeah.
You just shine a light into the sky with a Z. It's the Zyloh signal.
You do stream sometimes.
He does, yeah.
I do stream sometimes, but it's just me and my friends goofing off, playing Warzone or Rocket League. I don't know. For me, I like to be accessible everywhere, and so if you just watch other Twitch streamers, you'll likely see me in chat at some point. DMs are open on Twitter. Find me on Discord. You name it. This is my life. I'm everywhere.
All right. Well, thank you so much once again, Tyler, for joining us today. It's been really insightful. That is a really cool job you have, man.
Yeah, I mean, the only reason that I get to have this job is because a community exists, and that is the two of you and everybody watching. And so I'm just very grateful. I'm grateful for all the support, not just for the project, but the support is what allows me to do what I do, and it allows all of us to play the game that I think we've all wanted to play. And so for that, genuinely and heartfelt thank you.
And because
you're welcome.
And because you introduced us, I guess it's time for you to sign us out. So Zyloh, take it away, man.
All right. Thank you all so much for watching. I hope that it was all right, and I will see you next time. This is Meyer. Wait, no, wrong way. This is Meyer. This is Darj. I'm Zyloh. Peace.
Peace.
Peace.